Imagine this. Your government spends more on interest payments than on the military, education, or even the roads you drive on every day. That's not a prediction, it's happening right now. Across the globe, governments are racking up debt at a pace we've never seen before. The numbers are so huge, they barely seem real. But here's the terrifying part. They can't stop. Like a runaway train, the world's largest economies are barreling towards a future where they might not be able to borrow another dollar. What happens when the world runs out of credit? What's at stake isn't just arcane budget math. It's the future of everything from your job to your retirement savings. Let's find out just how deep the debt rabbit hole goes. In the aftermath of wars, pandemics, and financial crises, countries turned to debt like never before. Whenever disaster struck, borrowing became the tool of choice to fund stimulus checks, to pay for vaccines, to salvage broken economies. At first, it was a lifeline, but over time, it became a habit. Today, global public debt has soared to heights only seen at the end of World War II. Back then, the world rebuilt from the ashes. Now, debt is piling up in peacetime, even with booming economies and record-low unemployment. The United States is a case in point. Once, it was unthinkable for America to run huge deficits outside of a major war or recession. Now, trillion-dollar gaps are the new normal, year after year. In 2023, the federal government shelled out $880 billion just on interest payments. That's more than the entire defense budget and 4 times what it spent a decade ago. Every year, the mountain of debt grows taller, and the interest bill gets bigger. And it's not just an American story. In Europe, Asia, and across the developing world, governments are borrowing more and faster than ever before. But why do governments keep borrowing, even when the dangers are obvious? At its core, government borrowing isn't all that different from a household taking out a loan. When a country issues a bond, it's like writing an IOU. Lend us money now and we promise to pay you back, with interest, later. For decades, this seemed almost too easy. With interest rates near zero, borrowing looked harmless. Why raise taxes or cut spending when you can just borrow more cheaply? But the era of easy money is over. Inflation is back, and central banks are raising rates to fight it. Suddenly, that pile of cheap debt is looking a lot more expensive. The cost to service old loans is ballooning. And worse, many governments are now borrowing just to pay back past debts. It's the financial equivalent of using one credit card to pay off another, a dangerous game with only one ending. Welcome to the debt trap. Once you're in, it's almost impossible to get out without pain. But who's keeping governments in check? Enter the bond vigilantes. These are the investors who buy and sell government debt, and they're always watching. When they sense that a government is losing control of its finances, they can turn on a dime, selling bonds and driving up borrowing costs. The United Kingdom learned this the hard way in 2022. When a new government rolled out a risky budget plan, the bond market revolted. Yields soared, mortgage rates spiked, the pound crashed. In a matter of days, trust in the government evaporated, and the Prime Minister was forced to resign. The message from the markets was clear. Even rich countries aren't immune from the consequences of bad debt management. Now imagine if the next meltdown isn't in London, but in Washington, D.C. The U.S. dollar is the backbone of global finance. If investors lose faith in America's willingness or ability to pay its debts, the shockwaves would be felt everywhere. From Wall Street to Main Street, from Beijing to Berlin, the whole house of cards could come tumbling down. Is there a way out? Some economists argue that government deficits aren't always bad, that when the public sector borrows, it can create surpluses for households and businesses. Maybe debt isn't the villain after all, but others warn that there's a limit. Print too much money to cover deficits, and you risk runaway inflation, the kind that destroys savings, kills investment, and destabilizes societies. Japan stands as a curious example. For decades, it's run up some of the highest debt levels in the world. So far, no disaster. But can that last forever? Or is Japan simply the canary in the coal mine, warning the rest of the world what's coming? The truth is, there's no free lunch in economics. Someone, somewhere, always pays the bill. Maybe it's taxpayers. Maybe it's future generations. Maybe it's all of us, through slower growth, higher prices, or weaker public services. But what happens if the worst-case scenario unfolds? If bond markets snap like they did in the 1970s, the results could be catastrophic. Interest rates could spike overnight, making it impossible for governments to borrow at reasonable costs. Inflation could surge out of control. Political chaos could follow, as leaders scramble to cut spending, raise taxes, or in the most extreme cases, default on their debts. Investors might simply refuse to buy government bonds or demand sky-high returns to compensate for the risk. That means less money for schools, hospitals, and roads, and more uncertainty for everyone. We're gambling with the very foundation of modern finance. Trust is everything. When that trust runs out, so does the system that's underpinned decades of prosperity. So, is government debt the ticking time bomb everyone fears? Or is it just misunderstood accounting, a tool that, if used wisely, can power growth and opportunity? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Hit like if you learned something new, and don't forget to subscribe. We break down the biggest forces shaping your future every single week.